Arndale has been here nearly 50 years now in Manchester. I think we've had 16, 17 new openings this year, which is a significant number.
And when we think about the UK, Manchester and the region around it, it's one of the most dynamic parts of the UK economy. Location is really important. That's the thing that builds resilience through time.
Just watching the way the city's changing is really, really fascinating.
And for M&G, it's a great example of its business model in action. Welcome today to our Investment Story series, which we're recording from the iconic Arndale Centre in Manchester. And what better place to host today's conversation where we'll be doing a deep dive on the world of retail, its evolution, its challenges and the future opportunities. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Martin Towns, Global Head of Real Estate at M&G, who oversees a £38 billion real estate business, which includes investments in the retail sector, such as the Arndale Centre. David Allinson, Centre Director here at Arndale Manchester. He's been at the heart of this destination for a number of years. And Alex King-Byatt, Managing Director at CityCo, a not-for-profit organisation that supports and promotes businesses in Manchester city centre. And my name is Kate Russell. I'm an investment analyst at the M&G Life Investment Office, where we run a range of multi-asset portfolios, including our flagship PruFund range. And what differentiates this proposition is the combination of its scale, its structure, and smoothing. And what we mean by this is the scale of a £130 billion with profit fund, which includes PruFund, really unlocks our investment strategy. It allows us to access high quality investment capabilities like the real estate platform, to invest in differentiating assets like the one we're sat in today as part of a broader diversified portfolio. Its structure as a multi-asset life fund means that PruFund can hold more asset classes. So we invest in traditional asset classes like equities and bonds, but we also have allocations to private and alternative assets like private equity and physical property. This makes PruFund a highly diversified proposition that we expect to be more resilient than a traditional 60-40 multi-asset fund. And it's the stable return of these diversified assets that means that we can wrap the proposition together in the smoothing mechanism that you can expect from any PruFund product. And Martin, we often talk about M&G's unique business model where you've got a life business and then the expertise within the asset manager. But from your perspective, how does that relationship work when you're doing your real estate portfolio?
So I love talking about this feature of our business when I talk with people around the world and particularly our broader client base, because the fact that we have this life company within M&G and we have PruFund, which as you said is investing at scale in lots of asset classes, including real estate, it means that we've got this broad reach across the globe in terms of where we're investing. But it also means oftentimes that M&G is effectively co-investing alongside our third-party clients as well. So we'll have the life company investing in a property or investing in a broader real estate fund. And then we're inviting our third-party institutional clients to invest in that alongside us. And that helps us with getting scale, but it's also something that's really attractive to those external clients, knowing that M&G is not just looking after their capital, but they're really invested in it as well on behalf of their life company. You've really got that alignment of interest. So I think it is a unique feature of our business, and it's something that our broader client base is really attracted to.
And I guess that's how it benefits PruFund's customers as well. Because of that scale, which is supported then by third-party clients, you're able to access more attractive assets like the Arndale Centre.
100%. It's a virtuous circle. It's a win-win. We get greater scale within the business. That means it's a more attractive business for people to want to work in. It's more interesting for them and their careers. And that helps to generate better investment performance for the life company, for PruFund, and for those third-party clients.
I'm so excited for today's discussion to bring this investment story to life and to explore how M&G's business model works in practice. So you have a life business that's deploying large-scale capital through the PruFund range. You've got global expertise in the asset manager like the real estate business that can allow us to invest in differentiating assets like Arndale. That brings exciting opportunities for the local community, as well as aiming to deliver a stable return for our customers. So it's great to have everyone here, and you may be able to tell that we're filming outside of usual shopping hours in what would usually be a very vibrant centre. but it's the perfect setting to talk about the retail sector, how it's changed, and how it's looking into the future. So Martin, as I said, you oversee a £38 billion global real estate platform. Could you just give us an overview of this business and how you invest?
Of course, yeah. So 38 billion invested globally. So we're in 26 different countries around the world, and teams on the ground in the UK, across Europe, and across Asia as well. And we're investing across all different types of property. So we're investing in residential buildings to rent, we're investing in office properties, logistics properties, and of course in the retail sector as well. So that retail portfolio is also global. So we own, for example, large shopping center in New Jersey in the US. We own one of the largest shopping parks in Italy. And of course, we own some iconic shopping centers in the UK as well, including the Arndale Centre. So it's a really diverse business, a really diverse asset class. And of course, it really touches the real world, the real economy, because essentially what we're doing is we're investing in the spaces where people live and people work and where economic growth is generated. And that's the thing that really makes the asset class fascinating. And of course, we see constant evolution within the sector as well. So we've seen changes in the way that people shop as a consequence of e-commerce, for example. But one of the things that that's done is it's really strengthened the appeal of these large city centre shopping centres like Arndale, where we are today.
And can we just touch on the UK presence? Because where we sit in M&G's London office, we actually oversee the biggest asset in the portfolio. So next door to our office on Fenchurch Avenue is an asset called 40 Leadenhall, which is a big office space that's been a huge development project for your team and is the biggest asset held within PruFund. Could you just talk about the importance of the UK market when you're looking at properties?
I think when you mentioned 40 Leadenhall and you mentioned us overseeing it, that's exactly the right word, because as you mentioned, our office is directly next to it. So we've been able to witness the construction of the building firsthand, which is actually fascinating for everybody in the company to see that, I think. But the thesis with that particular investment was that we believe that occupiers today want to be in better quality office spaces with lots of amenity, and they want to be in buildings with high ESG standards, so high environmental performance. That's important to occupiers today, partly because it's important to the people who work there, therefore it's important to the employer. So what we set out to do was to create that space, to create that future fit office building, and we've done that at scale. So that building is in excess of 900,000 square feet in the heart of the City of London. So it's one of the largest office buildings, and we're seeing tenants coming. And so the building has recently been completed, but it is now fully leased. So in terms of an investment for the fund, for policyholders, it's really delivered what we thought it would deliver. But of course, in the UK, we're not just investing in London, we're not just investing in office buildings, we're investing across the country in a really large, diverse portfolio. So logistics buildings, increasingly, for example, residential buildings to rent, which has been a really growing part of our portfolio over the past few years. And then, of course, investing in the retail sector as well at scale. And in some of those retail investments that we've made, these have been really long-term investments. So focusing on being in the right location, right in the heart of the city centre. And then those investments have really evolved over time as the retail landscape has shifted and as shoppers' preferences have shifted.
And actually, you mentioned scale there. I want to talk about how that unlocks your investment strategy, because I can't imagine there are many buildings the size of the one that we're sat in here in the UK. So how does scale support what you're trying to do in the portfolio?
It's really important because it gives us a wider range of opportunities that we can invest in, because we can do these really big scale investments. Why is that helpful? Why is that a good thing? So if we take that office building example that I gave in London, 40 Leadenhall, if we develop at scale, it means we can invest in the amenities in the building, which makes it more attractive for occupiers because it makes it more attractive for staff to work there. if you're investing in a shopping center at scale, it means that you're owning a large part of the city center, and you can really manage the mix of retailers in the center to make it more attractive to people to come there. So I think having that scale gives you more levers that you can pull in that individual investment. And over time, that should help to generate superior returns. So it's a great advantage that we have when we're investing.
And then in terms of the investment in Arndale, would you mind just giving us a bit of a history lesson in terms of M&G's investment and relationship with Arndale?
So I think it's fascinating if you look back at the evolution of that investment. So I think our first investment in Arndale would have been around 1997, I think it was. And retail has evolved hugely over that time period, but we've been able to keep renewing the center, investing in the center, and making sure that it is right for today's occupier needs and for what people want when they go into the city center and they go shopping. And it's become over time more about an experience. And I think particularly when people have choices now as to how they shop because of the growth of e-commerce, making retail about an experience, coming into the city center for the day, being in the shopping center, experiencing all these amazing brands that we have here, these incredible stores that are being developed by our retailers. So if you transported us back to, say, 1997 and you came here, I think it would look and feel very different to today. Considering from an investment case perspective, if you're investing in a city center like this and you're in a super prime location and you're doing it at scale, that makes it resilient because you're in the right location fundamentally. And so you can then hold that asset for longer, but keep investing in it and keep making it fit for what today's retailers and the public want.
And David, just turning to you, because you've been here for a number of years and you probably know the centre better than anyone else. So could you just build on what Martin's outlined in terms of the evolution of Arndale as a place for shopping, but also for experience?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's very much, I think over that time period, it's turned from a shopping centre into a fully fledged destination, really, because, and taking Martin's point about that scalability and being able to develop and change the retail mix, then not too many years ago, we would not have had the breadth and depth of F&B offers. We would not have had leisure offers here. Our opening, we can be open till midnight for specific events that are happening. So it's very much offering a far wider range of experiences for an increasingly broadening range of shoppers, and that's also sort of interlinked with the great success that Manchester is as well. What's really good for Manchester is really good for us as well.
Well, I have to say, when I was walking through Manchester last night, the Arndale Centre just sits so distinguished within the city. Would you mind just talking about sort of the role it plays as that focal point for people in Manchester?
Yeah, I mean, it dominates from the retail perspective. This is where retailers want to be located in the city. And what we also find is, particularly with international brands, yeah, of course they will look to London, but very, very often it's Manchester and it's the Arndale that they're then looking at. It's very much the second location. And that just talks to, the quality of this asset, how it's been developed and managed over time. An example of that is in 2018, M&G invested in creating a bespoke F&B hub in Halle Place. And again, that has been transforming the F&B offer as well. So transformation just goes on and on and on. So it's an exciting time.
And I was hoping we should just touch on the economic impact that it has on the surrounding area, because I've got some figures here which are pretty amazing, that within an hour's drive from the Arndale Centre, you have 7.2 million people living here. You have 250,000 people who work in the city centre every day, and you have a student population of 100,000 with a retention rate of 50% post-graduating, which is the highest of any UK city outside of London. So it seems like Arndale's just perfectly positioned to be able to cater for all of those people.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think it's also extremely important that we don't the centre doesn't sit as an island within that. So one of the things that is extremely important to us is the private and public relationship that we have. So we spend a great deal of time in developing our stakeholder interests with a whole range of groups. That will be from from the council to all the community initiatives that we take place in. So it's really, really important for the team here and for the centre that we are part of that wider community as well. And through that, we generate the benefits that we do. But yeah, Manchester is economically, it's still developing, and it's a real powerhouse.
And Alex, this might actually be a nice time to talk about your role within CityCo, what you've seen in terms of the evolution of Manchester, of Arndale, and the role that the retail sector plays within the city.
So CityCo is the city centre management company. We're a not-for-profit partnership. It is an experience. You can come in at 8 in the morning, have your breakfast, get your nails done. It's a complete experience for people in the city centre. We bring the private sector and the public sector together, and we do those big projects that we've talked about. So we try and make the trading conditions as best that they can be in the city centre. We tackle some of the more gritty stuff that sometimes we're not sure where it sits. Is it the council? Is it the police? Is it business? So we sort of the jam in the sandwich, if you like, of the city to try and bring everyone together. We deliver the retail bid, so that's business improvement district for retail and leisure. So obviously David's occupiers here are, in the mix of that, but it also goes on to New Cathedral Street, which is an M&G asset, and into St Anne's Square and on to King Street. So we are literally 24-hour service. We're on the end of the phone for all of our members. We put on lots of great events, lots of great PR that we generate, but we get everyone around the table and we really understand what this business community wants and wants us to do for them to make sure that we are still a really attractive place to live, work and enjoy your leisure time.
And for a centre that has been open for so long and has such rich history, how do you keep it fresh? How do you bring in new retailers, new brands? How do you keep that experience sort of current?
Well, I think one of the key things is we're able to collect a lot of data. So we have our footfall data, we have sales data, we have ongoing research programs with use of our leasing agents as well. So we have a lot of data. It's making sure that is analysed, that you're interpreting it, getting feedback from our retail partners as well, and actually making sure that you're linking that into what is happening within the city as well. So our demographic is getting younger. So 57% of our shoppers are under the age of 34. So it's taking all that information that we have on site and within the wider catchment that you reference as well, and that then enables us to plan. And it's not just also about looking at a particular brand or a particular retailer. Sometimes that is the case, but it's also understanding how those complement our existing portfolio within the centre. And because we know through our research that if a certain demographic shops in one store, they're also going to shop in these others. So it's also how we zone those around the centre. So as you walk around the centre, you may be able to pick out certain types of zones or shops that are grouped together that you would expect to see together. So it makes it easier and more enjoyable to shop as well.
I think that it's interesting to think about how you combine that local knowledge and that data with the more global understanding as to what's happening in the retail market as well. So I think that's one of the advantages that we have, going back to your point about scale. It's not just scale in terms of individual buildings, it's scale in terms of the broader portfolio that we're investing in. So again, we're investing in shopping centres globally, and we see some of the brands that we might be familiar with from, say, Singapore or Seoul starting to diversify into Europe, and we already have relationships with them. And that's really helpful when they're thinking about coming somewhere in the UK and making sure they want to come to somewhere like Arndale. So I think for us as investors, combining that local knowledge and expertise with that global understanding of trends in the retail space and those global relationships, that's really helpful and really valuable.
And Martin, from your perspective in managing a portfolio, you've talked about the importance of having quality assets in prime locations, and I imagine that's a huge draw for some of these brands. Could you just expand on then how you sort of identify those opportunities and the role you play as an active manager, once an investment in somewhere like Arndale is made, how M&G Real Estate stays involved?
Our job as a fund manager is to really think holistically about how do we invest in the real estate asset class. So we think about that geographically, and how much money do we want to have in the UK versus in, France, for example. And we think about how much money we want to have in different sectors of the market, which all have different characteristics, different risk return profiles. So investing in the residential asset class, for example, is quite different to investing in the office asset class. So we're seeking to build diversification geographically and within sectors. And then if you zoom into a country level or a sector level, what are we looking for in individual investments that we make? This is going to sound like quite a corny thing to say, but it's true in real estate investing, as it is when you buy a house. Location is really important, because that's the thing that builds resilience through time and allows you to keep investing in that asset to make sure it's fit for purpose. So we spoke about, 40 Leadenhall, that new office development, which is a brand new building. But equally, we'll have assets that we've owned for a number of years. We still like that location. And so we're investing back into that asset to bring it up to today's standards. So location is really important. And then it's about taking all that knowledge and information that we have across the globe in terms of the things that occupiers really want. So when a business is looking for space, whether that is an office building or a logistics building, what are the particular things that they want in that building in terms of its physical characteristics? And then we can make sure we're A, buying the right buildings, but B, we're investing in them and upgrading them to meet today's expectations. And that helps us to generate strong returns for investors. And again, this is such a fantastic example in Arndale, all the things we've already discussed, of how we've kept investing in the asset over the years. And that's meant it continues not just to be relevant, but it can continue to be the dominant retail offer in Manchester city centre. And that's great for our investors. I think we have approaching 50 assets across different property types in the wider Manchester region, which is about £1 billion, probably in excess of £1 billion of capital invested. So we've been a long-term investor in the region. And when we think about the UK, Manchester and the region around it, it's one of the most dynamic parts of the UK economy. So as a long-term investor in real estate, we're interested in investing in those dynamic economies that are growing. That's what drives, occupier interest in those buildings. It means that we can grow rental income. And again, that's good for our investors.
I think also just, picking up your point, Marty, on location and what you just said there is, we're coming into the peak trading periods at the moment, and we'll very shortly, we'll be welcoming over 1 million shoppers per week. So we expect to be 240,000 people a day at certain days. And last year, the centre, we saw 45 million shoppers, and already our footfall, we're 4% up as we sit here today. So we'd be looking to beat that by the year end. So when we say location is important and getting your product mix and your retail mix correct, then I think the proof is there in the footfall.
Definitely. Well, maybe that's a nice opportunity to talk about that retail mix and some of the retailers that have moved in the last year. Because looking around, I definitely have some favourites, but I was wondering if you could maybe talk us through some of the stories behind their launch. So starting with Lego, because this is a brand that has stores across our 3 large shopping centres in Cribbs Causeway, Bluewater, and then of course Arndale. And I know the Manchester Evening News referred to the store opening as a bigger and better Lego store. So could you just give us an overview of that store launch?
They were already located in the centre, but they doubled the size of their store and a complete new retail fit out. And I think one of the things that you will see, historically you've seen it, but even more in the last 2 years, is this huge emphasis on the customer experience. And not the customer service and the customer experience are 2 different things, but with the brand and the brand loyalty of Lego and their care that they take to inform the customer about what the purpose of their product is and how it works and how that customer get the most of it. It's a really brilliant example of what the customer experience is all about. Now, people just go back again and again, and they're very creative with different brands that they partner with, the development of their products themselves. So So we have seen a number of, I think we've had 16, 17 new openings this year, which is a significant number. We've had some other really exciting brands. Sephora opened in August this year. Huge buzz about them coming, not just for the centre, but for the city as well. And so we had a queue of over 750 people queuing before the store opening. So again, brilliant about that. And they're performing extremely well. I think it's also about, because they're doing well, then it's not actually competing necessarily with other cosmetic brands. We're seeing an uplift on those complementary brands as well. Hotel Chocolat have got a huge new site, including the cafe, their Velvetizer cafe. They've got a downstairs conference and chocolate making area. So it's all about the experience. That's really, really important. And, we try and reflect that in everything we do, really.
We must pop into some of these stores on our way out when we finish today. But the one other I wanted to mention is Next, because it'd be remiss of me not to mention it when I'm sat directly opposite one of the biggest Next stores I've ever seen. They've increased their space, or have they?
No, they have been in the centre, quite a long time, since the extension of this side of the centre that we're sitting in. As 650,000 square feet was added in 2005, and they came into the store there. It's a really interesting store and a concept because it really is a department store, and it is the most requested store of any of our visitors. So any questions of where's the store, it's always Next. They score extremely highly on our mystery shopper results because their service is excellent. But this department store, so they have Gap, they have all sorts of different brands within there. And it's a really successful store for them in Manchester.
If I may, we try and support that through the Business Improvement District, where we overlay events and activities which can bring all the retailers together, but they can interpret it in their own way. So when we do the Halloween festival a couple of weekends ago, David and team very kindly let us come in and put inflatable monsters on the roof and hand out different decals for the windows. And we've got skeletons doing the conga along the walkways. And it's really, really good fun. But, the serious point underneath that is that there's a collective coming together of all the retail brands to celebrate. And we do the marketing and they come in numbers. And what's really lovely, particularly for Manchester, is that we've got lots of very young families in the city. It's a free event. You come into the city centre, you can engage in retail as much as you want, or you can stand back and watch the fun, and it really just grows. And lots of other cities are now putting monsters on their shopping centres, but I'd just like to say we were the first.
You were the first.
I think we had 22, didn't we, this year? Was it?
We absolutely
So
knocked it out of the park this year.
across the whole city.
Yeah,
It's great. It's a really good
Yeah.
example of that collaboration. That's just one
It's just one
example
event.
through the whole year that we do.
Yeah. So we do the Super Duper Festival, which we launched last year. It's in February half term, and it is 9 play zones across the city centre, completely free. So it will be in Arndale, Printworks, Corn Exchange. It's absolutely fantastic. You see basically all the dads playing Pong on a huge big screen, all the kids playing against their dads, and it's just great fun. And I think the knock-on effect for you guys was casual dining took a big bump that week.
Yeah, so you can see there's a direct impact on the sales, so you can accurately measure it as well.
Yeah,
But it's so it works extremely well. Yeah.
I think it's amazing, all those examples that you're giving. If you think about how resilient our city centres are now. So we've had that big change in retail with e-commerce, and that was a big question mark as to demand for retail space and need for retail space in city centres. And then, of course, we've all lived through COVID. Yeah. And that raised big question marks about how we live and work. And to be sitting here today in Arndale, having these conversations about the vibrancy of the city centre and the vibrancy of retail, it's really testament to the strength of our city centres, but also a lot of the work that goes on to make sure they are vibrant. Everything that you're talking about, everything you're involved in, and everything you're doing with this shopping centre. So I think it's partly that people want to come together. People want to be in those urban areas and mixing and having that experience. But it's also to do with the effort that goes in behind the scenes to make that place so appealing.
I completely agree. And what I'm hearing is, you as a starting point, you need the investment to support that. And you need the continued investment from portfolios like this. And then you need the attractive and exciting retail mix in order to make this a focal point. And then you can see the sort of the tangible benefits that's having on the local community. It's a really amazing
It's the attitude.
story.
Of course we want to be involved. Of course, we want to try something different. And because you've got this ownership and you've got this empowerment to be that leader in this space, we can do all these fun things. We've had Oasis over the summer. It took a bit of organising that from a city centre perspective. We brought together the independent retail sector and the F&B market. We knew that we were going to have a real challenge to get everybody up to Heaton Park because it's out of the city centre. We knew that, lots of different areas of the city would be putting on their own kind of Oasis festival. What you need is someone behind all of that. So working with partners, the promoters, the council, the police and others. So, gliding along smoothly, we as a city delivered a great few days of unforgettable music. But we all had to work together to get it done, and it was brilliant. And I wish I'd invested in bucket hats.
Is there anything we should be looking out for in terms of events?
Just a little thing called the Brits coming to Manchester, so that's really exciting. So through the accommodation bid, which is a sister organisation to the retail bid, we managed to persuade the Brits to come outside of London for the first time ever. So that will be in early next year, and we've also got the Mobos coming to Manchester for the first time, and then into 2027 we've got the NBA coming over from America. Again, that's a really good example of the business community coming together and saying we want to collectively put some money into the pot to bid for these big footfall driving overnight stay events, and the whole city can celebrate together.
So, we've touched on the mix of retailers, and we've touched about the sort of changing landscape of the in-store experience. But, it's very clear from this conversation, just from walking around, that Arndale is so much more than just a shopping centre. David, could you talk about how you've seen that in-store experience evolve and how people are using the centre differently today versus of 10 years ago?
Well, I think it goes back to how the mix of the retail and the leisure has changed. So we have, as I said, we have extended hours, but it's also there's links between the different brands as well. So you have campaigns that are run that are linked through maybe an F&B with a hospitality leisure venue. So there's a bit of sort of at a micro level that's developed. But I think wider, it's also about the wider city centre, because without the partnership links that we talked about, you don't get that added value that is so important. So, the experience that we work to deliver with the retailers that we talked about, is vital, because if you haven't got that, you've got no base to build on. But it's actually then how you incorporate the wider Manchester city centre offer then gives you that real added value. And it's not necessarily just about the sales either, which is key, but that is obviously something that is our top priority. But it's actually, we want to be part of that wider community for that longevity. I mean, the Arndale has been here nearly 50 years now in Manchester. So it's the whole community activity that we get involved in, that we work with Cityco, work with council. So that's really key, that you're actually a valued part of the city centre. And that is also really important to shoppers as well, because we have a very, very loyal shopper base that come back very regularly as well. So it's really important, and we know that because we get feedback from our visitors.
And the transformation of the shopping experience to be more about sort of this destination, Martin, from a global perspective, is that a trend you're seeing across the globe? Is that UK specific? Do you see that sort of the transformation of the shopping experience more widely?
Yeah, definitely. I think that a lot of it goes back to e-commerce, and that's different country by country. So of course, e-commerce is a feature of most economies that we're investing in. But the extent of online shopping versus physical shopping does vary country by country. But generally, we're seeing that same point, that retail is becoming about two things, really. It's more about the experience, and it's more about a leisure element and a dining element as well. And through getting those things right, shopping centres are becoming more of that community hub within their local area. So we see that across the globe. I was in Singapore recently, and I was looking at our Compass One shopping centre there, and you see some parallels, but you see some differences as well. So in Compass One, it's a dominant neighbourhood shopping centre. It's got long opening hours, and it's probably at one of its busiest times in the evening, actually. And the food element there is even greater than it is in the Arndale centre. So many families who live in the residential apartment buildings nearby they're coming there in the evening to socialize and to eat, and they're doing that on a regular basis. So it's really become, it's busy throughout the day, but the type of people who are there is changing. So I think there are sort of parallels at sort of a macro level in terms of the big trends that are changing the way we live and therefore the way we shop. But again, as we said earlier, you need to understand those local differences to make sure you're making the right investment decisions.
And I think that's, one of the benefits of the platform you run, right? You have this global expertise, so you can identify those macro trends, but then you also have specialists who know the local and the country by country nuance inside out.
Exactly. And it's combining those two things. So that is the secret sauce, really, getting the local knowledge with that kind of big picture macro understanding as well.
And David, Alex, have you seen the sort of the profile of the retail experience change in terms of internationalization of some of the retailers that are taking space in Arndale?
Yeah, very much so. The sort of vast majority of our retailers are sort of national, but there is a huge increase in international brands as well. But we also have some independent retail as well. So you'll find a really strong mix. But most of the brands you'll find in other countries as well. And that also reflects the change in the demographic that we're seeing in Manchester as well. We were talking about sort of trends, and something that is been very apparent in the last few years is the interest in sort of Asian food, Korean in particular, beauty products. We've got the themes that have come from other countries that are actually really embedded now within the UK, and I think that also links into the growing student population, and also about healthy eating and healthy living, lifestyle changes. So there's a whole mix of things that go on there. And interestingly, we have a Korean supermarket that opened a couple of years ago, Aseo, and of any brand that we've ever publicized, that received the most social media interest, and 7 days after it opened, people were still having to queue to get into it.
Wow.
So that there's huge interest in that.
Some of the work that I do with some of the residential apartments, the newer build ones, a lot of the residents are on a fairly short lease because they're here to study, and that's driving the kind of products and brands that we want to see in the city centre. So these brands are really flying when they're in the right place for the people that want to see them there. So it's really interesting to watch. And I couldn't get into the supermarket. I tried 2 days running and I gave up. So I'll have to go back later.
But I think when we talked about sort of the private-public relationship before, Manchester is a big city, but I think we all say you don't need many people around the table to actually make the decision. And there's because Greater Manchester Combined Authority that own the airport, then you can, well, we're talking sort of about the Asian trends. There's 4 or 5 airlines out of Manchester Airport. You can fly direct to Asia. So, and Marketing Manchester do the route development work for the airport, and then that links into the development, the investment, how the population's going. It then links into, well, what brands do we need to attract there? So there's this sort of vertical integration, if you like, that everyone is aware of and everyone is planning for. And I think within Manchester, because of organisations like Cityco, of which the council are fully embedded in, I think that's quite unique in many ways.
So then just back to the retail sector, because you've painted a very dynamic picture and an evolving picture over the last few decades. But if we were to look forward, and Martin, I might start with you, when you're thinking about new investments into the retail sectors or reinvesting into existing investments, what are the types of things that you're looking for, that you're doing to future-proof these allocations?
So I think it's not just retail, it's real estate generally. I think what we've really learned from our experience over the past few years with the growth of e-commerce, with the changes we've seen in demand for offices through COVID, you need to look a long way ahead, and you need to try to anticipate what the needs are going to be and what the preferences are going to be of occupiers. And fundamentally, that comes back to anticipating how people are going to want to live and work. Real estate's a long-term investment. It takes a long time to buy an asset. It takes quite a long time to sell an asset. So you need to think about these longer term kind of structural drivers of where people want to live, where people want to work, and what their preferences are. And then, as we talked about earlier, it's about making sure you're in the right location. That's the most fundamental thing. It's very hard to change that once you've made that investment. There's a bit about anticipating there with locations as well, in terms of how are transport connections going to change, how are people going to be working, living, commuting patterns and so on. So we factor that in, but you try to invest in those locations which you think are future-proofed. And usually that means being in the urban city centre or being close to the transport connections for movement between those urban centres, either people movements, commuting patterns, or goods when we're thinking about logistics, for example. And then it becomes about the physical characteristics of the building. But of course, you can change those physical characteristics. And increasingly, that's what we're doing, whether that's on the retail side, whether it's in the office side, whether it's in, for example, blocks of student housing that we own in various cities across the UK, investing in those to upgrade them to meet the expectations and standards of today's students instead of the expectations, 15, 20 years ago, which have changed. If I look at the student housing we own today compared to student housing that I occupied when I was at university a long time ago, I can tell you it's quite different. So it's thinking long term, and then making sure that you are continuing to invest in those assets.
And then, David, over to you. How are you looking at the future of Arndale, and what changes are you maybe anticipating?
You've got to look outward, and obviously Martin's looking globally. I'm looking into the city really, and really. So a key part of my role is understanding how the city is developing in the long term. So from that through from we talked about transport networks is key. So the extending of the metro link has been a huge impactor in a positive way within the city centre, but it's about route development, investment. There's a huge amount of investment. I think there's in the region of about £10 billion worth of investment in the pipeline. 3,500 hotels have had planning approval for hotel bedrooms this year. So that data, and then trying to understand how that will translate in longer term is really key. I think people generally in city centres are time poor and they're looking for service. You've also then got to look at lifestyle changes. How will that affect the services and offers that we bring into the centre? So I think you've got to take that all together and actually try and forecast some of the things, but it will change. I think there will be more leisure. I think there will be maybe more health services, fitness services, more that talk to people's lifestyle changes. I think that will come.
Well, Alex, what are you seeing in terms of the evolution and the progress of Manchester?
I mean, when I moved here 30 plus years ago, you could ballroom dance down Market Street at 8 o'clock. There was just nobody around. It was quite good for the live music scene because you could make as much noise as you wanted to and didn't bother anyone. Now we've got people living residential districts alongside our traditional, edgy culture areas, as well as new towns. So Strangeways is a big regeneration piece there, working with Manchester and Salford. Holt Town, which is a whole new infill piece, if you like, between the Etihad and the city centre. Thousands and thousands of people. The thing that we've really seen, and we did a tour the other day with our members at Cityco around competitive leisure spaces. So obviously here at Arndale, you've got the Cube and you've got Kingpins, but lots of other offers around the city centre, which were traditional office spaces or underground bars, which are now golf, cricket, you name it, you can do it. And the technology is making it a great, worthwhile experience. So just watching the way the city is changing is really, really fascinating. How the investors are thinking differently about their assets and starting to bring them back to life and really caring about some of the buildings which are difficult. They are very old banking halls or what have you, and really putting some love into those areas.
That's amazing to hear.
I mean, you'd say, yeah, we do have a lot of space, but in essence, because we're virtually fully let, then space is of a premium. So it's always looking at how you optimize that space, through experience and through the financial return. So that's the challenge as well. Is although we're this 650,000 square feet was added in 2005 to sort of more than double the size. we still look at every square foot to make sure we're getting the best return we can from it.
Well, this has been such a fascinating discussion to hear your experience in running a global real estate platform, but also how you identify opportunities here in the UK, to hear the story and the evolution of the Arndale Centre and then the positive impact that that's having on the community. And for M&G, it's a really good example of how the scale of life fund assets and the expertise within the asset manager can support real assets, and which creates tangible local benefits through job creation, economic value, and opportunities for communities. And I think also it brings to life the benefit of running diversified multi-asset portfolios, because we've been able to invest at this amazing asset at scale whilst also trying to offer long-term sustainable growth for PruFund's customers. So big thank you, Martin, David and Alex. This has been such an interesting conversation. I've loved hearing your insights on the retail sector here in Manchester, across the UK and globally.